Ma'am, the command is ready for inspection. Bring your units to order arms and parade rest.
The reviewing officials today include in the lead vehicle Governor Gretchen Whitmer, the Governor of the State of Michigan, Major General Paul D. Rogers, the Director of Military and Veterans Affairs and the Adjutant General for the Michigan National Guard, and Command Sergeant Major William W. Russell III, the Senior Enlisted Leader to the Adjutant General of the Michigan National Guard. In the second vehicle, Major General Brian Teff, Assistant Adjutant General Air, Brigadier General Robbie Wagg, Assistant Adjutant General Army, Brigadier General Rolf Mahman, Commander of the Air National Guard, and Brigadier General Jeffrey Terrell, Land Component Commander. And in the third vehicle, Chief Warrant Officer 5, Alan Robinson, State Command Chief Warrant Officer, Command Sergeant Major Matthew Hopkins, Command Sergeant Major for the Michigan Army National Guard, and Chief Master Sergeant Jenny Balaba, Command Chief Master Sergeant for the Michigan Air National Guard. Also welcome to the reviewing stand this morning, Sherry Shrewsbury, daughter of Governor Whitmer, Mrs. Sally Rogers and Nick Rogers, wife and son of Major General Paul Rogers, Brigadier General Matthew Brancato, 127th Wing Commander, Brigadier General Scott Hippica, the commander of the 46th MP Command, and his wife Sherry, T.J. Pierce, Executive Director for the National Guard Association of Michigan, Nancy Hanson Carger and Brett Frank, the great-great-great-grandson of Rasmuth and Marguerite Hanson, who originally deeded the land to establish Camp Grayling in 1913. And a special welcome back to the following retired general officers: Lieutenant General Thomas Cutler, Major General Jerry Cannon, Brigadier General Roger Allen, Brigadier General Gary Balling, Brigadier General Roger Burrows, Brigadier General Peter Inchsalulian, Brigadier General Warren Lawrence, Brigadier General Mitchell LeClaire, Brigadier General Gary Tellier, Brigadier General Ronald Wilson, Brigadier General Ronald Seeley, and Brigadier General John Carell.
Bring your units to attention and present arms.
Please rise and join the 126th Army Band in a salute to our nation as they play our national anthem. Please be seated. Today's flyover was brought to you by the Michigan Army National Guard, 3rd of the 238th General Support Aviation Battalion. The lead aircraft is piloted by CW4 Trevor Plow, and the formation is commanded by Air Mission Commander CW4 Ed Names.
Persons to be honored, post.
In the military family, recognition of individual and unit efforts are a high priority, and although each soldier and airman here is distinguished in their own right, there are some who have been recognized for that extra effort that makes each of us proud to wear the uniform. Presenting this year's awards are Governor Whitmer, Major General Rogers, Chief Warrant Officer 5 Robinson, and Command Sergeant Major Russell III. The Army Soldier of the Year Award is presented annually to the enlisted person who has outperformed their counterparts during the annual Soldier of the Year competition. This year's winner is Specialist Colton Andrews, 1463rd Transportation Company. The Army Non-Commissioned Officer of the Year Award is presented annually to the NCO who outperforms their counterparts during the annual Non-Commissioned Officer of the Year competition. This year's winner is Staff Sergeant William Strauss, Recruiting and Retention Battalion. The Major General Earl R. Stewart Award is presented annually to the best all-around Michigan Army National Guard enlisted soldier. This year's recipient is also Staff Sergeant William Strauss, Recruiting and Retention Battalion. The Army Warrant Officer of the Year Award is presented to the company grade warrant officer in the state of Michigan that best represents the skill and professionalism of a military warrant officer. This year's winner is Chief Warrant Officer 2, Aaron Cogswell, 177th MP Brigade. The Army Commissioned Officer of the Year Award is presented to the company grade officer in the state of Michigan that best represents the skill and professionalism of a military officer. This year's winner is Captain Casey Robbins, Alpha Battery, 1st Battalion, 182nd Field Artillery. The Army Medical Readiness NCO of the Year Award is presented to the Medical Readiness NCO in the state of Michigan that best represents the skill and professionalism of a Medical Readiness NCO. This year's winner is Staff Sergeant Brent Kearns, 146th Multifunctional Medical Battalion. The Army Inspector General NCO of the Year Award is presented to the Inspector General member in the state of Michigan that best represents the skill and professionalism of an Inspector General member. This year's winner is Master Sergeant Christopher Hine, JFHQ. The Army NCO Instructor of the Year Award is presented to the NCO instructor in the state of Michigan that best represents the skill and professionalism of an NCO instructor. This year's winner is Sergeant First Class Elijah Marling, 177th Regional Training Institute. The Air Force Airman of the Year Award is presented annually to the airman who outperforms their counterparts during the annual Airman of the Year competition. This year's winner is Airman First Class Cole Ali, 127th Operational Support Squadron. The Air Force Non-Commissioned Officer of the Year Award is presented annually to the non-commissioned officer who outperforms their counterparts during the annual Airman of the Year competition. This year's winner is Technical Sergeant Jacob Bennett, 110th Wing. The Air Force Senior Non-Commissioned Officer of the Year Award is presented annually to the Senior Non-Commissioned Officer who outperforms their counterparts during the annual Senior Airman of the Year competition. This year's winner is Master Sergeant Steve Jones, 172nd Attack Squadron. The Air Force First Sergeant of the Year Award is presented annually to the First Sergeant who outperforms their counterparts during the annual Airman of the Year competition. This year's winner is Master Sergeant Diana Nogiak, 110th Medical Services Group. The Air Honor Guard Award is presented for outstanding funeral services, rendering honors to military service members, retirees, and veterans. This year's winner is Airman First Class Ethan Leary, 191st Maintenance Squadron. The Order of the Founders and Patriots of America was founded in 1896. It has had direct connections with the military forces of our great country since that time. The Order is composed of men descended from a founder of this country before 1657 and a patriot ancestor in the same line who supported the American Revolution. A large majority of our associates have themselves served proudly in the armed forces of the United States. Their purposes are educational, historical, and patriotic. They love this country and commend you for your patriotic service and the unique and valuable mission you perform in the Michigan National Guard. The Order of the Founders and Patriots of America Award is presented annually to the best all-around National Guard unit. This year, we have the honor of recognizing the unit for this award for 2024. The unit to be given this distinguished honor for 2024 is the 46th MP Company. The Rasmus Hansen Award is presented annually to the most outstanding all-around junior enlisted soldier in the Michigan National Guard. Mr. Hansen donated the original section of land known today as Camp Grayling. Being honored this year is Sergeant Megan Lemaire, 1776 Military Police Company. Presenting this award is the great-great-grandson of Rasmus Hansen, Mr. Rick Frank, and the great-great-granddaughter, Ms. Trish Whitmer. Ladies and gentlemen, at this time I turn the microphone over to our state chaplain, Colonel Brian Martinez.
Today we take time and reflection to recognize our Michigan National Guard soldiers who have given their lives in defense of our great nation during the global war of terrorism. The 21 soldiers who have laid down their lives to protect our freedoms that we hold so dearly, through the reading of their names. We also take time and reflection and remembrance of the service members who have passed away over the past year, that have honorably served our great state of the nation, Michigan, and our nation. We honor them through and their families through the reading of their names, which will help us reflect upon their lives. Their service will not be forgotten, and each of these service members will always be remembered as heroes. With grateful hearts, we recognize each of them today and celebrate and honor their service to our nation. Will you please bow your heads? Almighty God, as we pause in reflection today of these service members who are no longer amongst our ranks, please help us never forget their sacrifices and their contributions that they have given to our great nation and our American way of life. We pray for their comfort for their families who are still dealing with the grief and the suffering of loss of their loved ones. Will you bring a sense of peace and comfort to their lives that surpasses all understanding? We pray your blessing upon us today during this time of remembrance and reflection. And I pray this in your most precious and holy name. Amen. At this time, I will read the Michigan National Guard 21 fallen soldiers who are heroes. Specialist Richard A. Goward, Staff Sergeant Michael J. Suter, Sergeant Craig S. Frank, Sergeant Ricky A. Kiefer, Specialist Timothy D. Brown, Jr., PFC John W. Deering, Sergeant Spencer C. Akers, Specialist Dane O. Carver, Sergeant Joshua V. Yeomans, Sergeant Matthew A. Weber, Staff Sergeant Dwayne J. Dresky, Specialist Bradley N. Snelling, Sergeant First Class James D. Presat, Specialist Wilson A. Elgering, Specialist Bobby Mejia II, Sergeant Chad J. Vollmer, Specialist Brandon L. Stout, Sergeant Matthew R. Soper, Sergeant First Class Matthew L. Hilton, Sergeant Kyle B. McLean. We will reflect now on our service members who have met their Heavenly Creator over the past year through the reading of their names, and we'll honor them at this time. Chief Warrant Officer 2, Robert McConnell. Command Sergeant Major Harold Golnick. Specialist Tucker McPherson. Sergeant Chester McGuina. And PFC Cynthia Travis. Sergeant Frederick Richard. Specialist Leon Kramer. Specialist Edward DeLane. PB2 James Nemeth. Sergeant Dwayne Beecher. Sergeant Gary Glenn. Sergeant Alvin Richard. Staff Sergeant Jace Baker. CW4 William Whiteblow. Master Sergeant Kenneth Baldwin. Specialist Eaton Sloan. PFC Norman Pearson. Staff Sergeant David Smith. PB2 Carl Roth. Specialist James Garnier. CW4 William Sexton. Sergeant John Gear. Specialist Christian Conley. PFC Dale McKee. Specialist Louis Shockley. First Class Brad Rinke. Specialist Leon McAfee. Staff Sergeant Alan Petty. Staff Sergeant Travis Fleming. Colonel James Jajek. Specialist Richard Richardson. Specialist James Lang. Sergeant First Class Chad Raines. Sergeant Charles Hood. Lieutenant Colonel Robert Duker. Lieutenant Colonel Patricia Bassett. Major Judith Persons. And Sergeant First Class Charles Hall. Please let us never forget what they have done in the defense of our nation, and may our memories and time we shared with them not be forgotten.
Bring your units to attention and present arms.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you are able, please rise in honor of our fallen service members.
Bring your units to order arms and at ease.
Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. Ladies and gentlemen, the Director of the Department of Military and Veterans Affairs and the Adjutant General for the Michigan National Guard, Major General Paul D. Rogers.
Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us here today. First of all, Governor Whitmer, thank you once again. There's never a doubt you're going to be here, but it means a lot to all of us that our Commander-in-Chief dedicates this day to honoring your service and memorializing those who have passed before us. Retirees, this is your family. This is your home. So it's always an honor to see you come back and feel welcome. And it brings us great honor that you would spend time with us on this day. To the families of all service members here and those deployed, thank you for your undying support and service and sacrifice to our nation and to our state. Your contribution to our national security, your contribution to our domestic response here within the state of Michigan is incredibly important to us, and we are honoring your contribution with these gatherings. To our community partners and distinguished guests, thank you for being part of this ceremony. It's always great to see friends who've been here before, but it's also great to see and hear some of the new attendees, some of our youngest. So don't silence them. They are a great part of this celebration, and I love hearing the babies and the young children speak up and be heard. So do not feel uneasy about that. That is a great part of these ceremonies. Today we pay tribute to those who've served before us, those who've stood on this parade field and who have trained in these woods or flown in these skies. Today we pay tribute to the legacy that they created, and we stand on their history, and we have the obligation to go forward and serve as well as they did. To the men and women who stand on this field today, thank you for your service. Thank you for what you do for your nation. Thank you for the selflessness in which you serve each and every day, and your willingness to wear our nation's cloth, to carry our nation's colors, and to go forward anywhere in the world or throughout the country. I'm going to take a little bit of time today to brag about you, because you deserve it. Of the 10,500 Michigan Guard members, both Army and Air, we are represented here by approximately 3,000, a little more than 3,000. Many of the others are deployed or have served already this year. Currently, we have 300 individuals serving overseas. We have 300 more going in a couple weeks. Our service overseas and your service to the national security of this nation and to the security and stability of the world is incredibly important. Last year, we had 1,400 members deploy and serve, either in the United States, in Guantanamo, or overseas. That will not stop. Your service is far too important to our nation. The Army individuals comprise 40% of the United States Army. The Air Force and their flying missions and all that they do make an even bigger impact to a smaller service. Today is the Army's birthday, 249 years old, but that pales in comparison to the National Guard, which was founded in 1636. But their service, their birthday, is something we celebrate today. We may even be celebrating a wedding anniversary for some members of this audience who will go unnamed. Because I'm not sure she thinks it's a celebration, but Scott, You serve in many different ways and you make a contribution. I just want to touch on a few themes for this year. International impact is significant. You started the state partnership program. The first partnership was between Latvia and Michigan. And we now are closing in on 100 state partnerships around the world. We also have Liberia, which has been a partner for many years. But this year, we are adding Sierra Leone. And we'll be having a ceremony in Sierra Leone in September to honor their addition to the partnership with Michigan and Liberia. But your impact internationally extends far beyond that. Many of you know that we have training partners from throughout the world that come to Michigan because of the professionalism that you represent, because of the service that they get here and the training value. We have an extensive training partnership with countries such as Taiwan, England, Canada, many other European nations, and then of course our own partners. This past week, many of you know, especially the engineers, that you hosted Latvian soldiers here training, but while you were doing that, the Chief of Defense from Angola and his entire staff came over to understand what the state partnership is all about. You were selected to be the host for that Angolan delegation so that they can see what looks right from a state partnership program. And you made an incredible impression on that country, which is trying to pull away from the Russian influence and come into the Western influence. And you've made a significant difference. I've already mentioned the deployments that are happening now and the deployments that are about to start. The contribution of our Air National Guard and their almost constant deployment status is incredibly important to our national security. And the investments in our Air National Guard are critically important to the nation and to the United States. And I'd just like to take this brief moment to thank our governor for her personal commitment to recapitalizing the flying missions at Selfridge and expanding the missions throughout the Air National Guard. So please join me in a round of applause for her service. And then, of course, the National All-Domain Warfighting Center, which is our branded name for the combined training environment here in Michigan. This is incredibly important to our national security. In several weeks, we will have over 7,000 members of every service, every component of the U.S. military, and 5 separate countries training here and preparing for that global war that we hope never comes. What you provide and the experience that you provide to all of them is incredibly important. The fact that you open your arms and you welcome them, and their training needs become your training needs. Their support becomes your support, and you personalize what they need to be successful as if it was your own need. That is what makes you special as a formation. That's what makes Michiganders special, and that's what we are also here to celebrate. So thank you all for your contributions, for your service, your sacrifice, and most of all, please, when you get home, thank your family for what they do for you each and every day. Because without them, we could not be standing here and doing what we are doing. It is my distinct pleasure and honor now to turn our podium over to an amazing Commander-in-Chief, somebody who had little military experience when she came into office, but has embraced the role and has never missed an opportunity to greet you, to meet with you, and to represent and advocate for you. We could not ask more of a Commander-in-Chief, and it is my distinct pleasure and honor to introduce your Governor, your Commander-in-Chief, Gretchen Whitmer.
Thank you, General Rogers. Good morning, everyone. Hello to all of the Michigan National Guard. I am excited to be here, both as governor of this great state and as your commander-in-chief. It's always an honor for me to participate in your traditions of the Michigan National Guard, recognize our outstanding service members, and remember our fallen heroes. Since before World War I, Michiganders have trained here at Camp Grayling to defend the freedoms that we all hold dear. You are building on that rich legacy by forging your own powerful story. You have proven yourselves as sources of compassion and strength, stepping up to serve your fellow Michiganders with distinction. You are always ready to respond to emergencies, and you play a vital role in keeping us all safe. As we look back on the past year, we are reminded of the role you played here at home and overseas. You hosted another successful iteration of Northern Strike, one of the Department of Defense's largest reserve component readiness exercises. We are proud that over 6,000 participants from 75 multi-service military units chose Michigan and the National All-Domain Warfighting Center for joint training. You deployed to Arizona and Texas to support U.S. Customs and Border Protection on the southern border. You trained with local, state, and federal law enforcement agencies to counter potential emergencies in Michigan. You conducted cross-agency response to a WMD exercise in Detroit and utilized bridging equipment to simulate an evacuation of Mackinac Island. And you fostered global partnerships, strengthening our defense relationships with the armed forces of Latvia, Liberia, and most recently, Sierra Leone, who are joining the State Partnership Program and will work alongside the AFL and Guard to address security challenges in West Africa. And I'm especially proud of the partnership between Michigan and Latvia on the easternmost flank of NATO. As they stand beside us, let's thank them for 30 years of partnership. I'm confident we will continue our joint exercises and security cooperation activities to benefit both nations. All of these relationships are critical in the face of aggression that we see in places like Ukraine and Taiwan, from adversaries that seek to undermine the sovereignty of free nations and undermine democratic values. Looking across this formation, I see so many powerful stories. Chief Warrant Officer 4 Laura Lingeman, who works at the Joint Force Headquarters in Lansing. She is the first woman serving in the state to have 40 years of total service. That's incredible. And Master Sergeant Helen Miller of JFHQ Public Affairs is the first woman to have 40 years of service. All of it as a member of the Michigan Army National Guard. Thank you both for your 40 plus years of service and for charting a path that so many have followed. I also see an incredible team of supporters, families, and community leaders who are invested in your success. I want you to know that I've got your back too. I will fight to ensure that our service members have the equipment, training, and resources you need to do your job effectively and safely. I'll go anywhere and work with anyone to secure funding that you need to carry out your missions. We know, and I want you to know, that the world understands that the Michigan National Guard is the best of the best, and it is because of all of you. And we got to recognize that it's not only our military members who serve, but your family members too. We will do all we can do to support the families of the Guard as well. And that's why we're making critical infrastructure upgrades at Selfridge, Fort Custer, Alpena, CRTC, Camp Grayling, to position each base for new missions, which will continue to support good paying jobs, driving economic growth, and of course securing our homeland. We are invested in armories and readiness centers to ensure women who serve in the Guard have equal access to essential facilities. We've made record bipartisan investments in veteran homelessness, suicide prevention programs, and mental health to connect those who have served and their families with the support that they need. And I was proud to sign bipartisan legislation expanding eligibility for the National Guard tuition assistance to spouses and dependents. 147 dependents have applied for tuition benefits since we expanded the program. And I hope you all and your families use this new benefit to pursue higher education or skills training tuition-free and land a good paying job here in Michigan. And finally, with support of our federal partners and community partners in Marquette, We're looking forward to building a new state veterans home in Marquette Township. To close, I want to thank all 11,000 members of the Michigan National Guard and their families. Thank you for your commitment to protecting our freedoms and keeping us safe. You represent the very best of Michigan, and we are all grateful for your service. Thank you.
Bring your units to attention.
Commander of Troops, pass and review.
Pass and review.
The 126th Army Band from Belmont, Michigan is under the command of Chief Warrant Officer 3 Kimberly Ferrante and Drum Major Sergeant First Class Christopher Herman. The Commander of Troops for today's military review is Colonel Andrew Boones, Chief of Staff for the Michigan Army National Guard. He is followed by the Joint Force Headquarters staff. The Joint Color Guard is being led by Chief Master Sergeant Eric Morse, 110th Wing. The 177th Regional Training Institute, headquartered in Augusta, is under the command of Colonel Eric Schramm. The senior non-commissioned officer is Command Sergeant Major Andrew Rodriguez. Joint Force Headquarters in Lansing, Michigan, is under the command of Captain Michael Minton. The senior non-commissioned officer is First Sergeant Kyle Herring. The Michigan Medical Detachment, headquartered in Detroit, is under the command of Lieutenant Colonel Matthew Garno. The senior non-commissioned officer is Sergeant First Class Chelsea Herman. The Michigan Recruiting and Retention Battalion, headquartered in Lansing, is under the command of Lieutenant Colonel Richie Sands. The senior non-commissioned officer is Command Sergeant Major David Lewis. 46th Military Police Command, headquartered in Lansing, is under the command of Brigadier General Scott Hippica. The senior non-commissioned officers command Sergeant Major Jody Arrington. The formation today is led by Colonel Russell Hardin.